When the rich stopped caring and the city started dying, a waitress did what no politician dared. She said, "I do," 5 times. 5 billionaires, one bankrupt city, and the waitress who dared to say, "I'll marry you, all of you, tonight." Seriously, can you even imagine? That's no typo, folks. And here's the kicker. She wasn't after their money. Not really. She needed their companies alive, their thousands of workers paid, and their towering egos. Well, let's just say they needed a little taming. Keep watching, because in the next few minutes we're going to unravel the unbelievable true story of how a tray-carrying, rent-juggling double-shift grinder completely rewrote the rules of love boardrooms and prenups all at the same damn time. It's a wild ride, and you won't want to miss a second. Anna Galliano, 28 years young, knew the rhythm of the city by the clatter of ceramic cups and the bleary eyes of her earliest customers. Every sunrise shift at the Harbor View Cafe was a ballet of motion, a dance of steaming coffee and toast, all while her mind did the grim arithmetic of overdue bills. Tips were razor-thin, rent was perpetually late, and the nightly news was a relentless drumbeat of recession layoffs and economic doom. The city she called home, once a beacon of industry, felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable collapse. Meanwhile, across town, 5 colossal firms, the very pillars that essentially kept the city breathing, were bleeding cash faster than a broken faucet. We're talking about steel shipping, cutting-edge tech, life-saving pharma, and the glittering world of fashion retail. These weren't just businesses. They were ecosystems supporting tens of thousands of families. Their owners, infamous, ruthless, cold, and as far as the world knew, utterly accustomed to winning. First there was Luca Voss, the unyielding titan of steel. His empire was forged in fire, but now even his steel was beginning to rust under the weight of debt. Then Matteo Cho, the quiet strategist of shipping, whose vast fleet of container ships once symbolized global trade, but now sat idle, accumulating crippling demurrage fees. Ray Keller, the brilliant volatile tech prodigy whose revolutionary algorithms were now overshadowed by plummeting stock values and a talent drain. Adrian Shah, the pharma prince, whose company held the patents to life-saving drugs yet couldn't secure funding for critical Phase 3 trials, leaving vital research in limbo. And finally, Dmitry Volkov, the flamboyant retail fashion mogul whose runway shows were legendary, but whose bottom line was unraveling due to unsustainable practices and a rapidly shrinking consumer base. Each of these men, despite their fierce rivalry, shared one terrifying common enemy. They owed millions, if not billions, to the same shadowy, predatory lender. This wasn't just about profit margins anymore. It was about survival. Default by quarter end meant a staggering 30,000 jobs gone in an instant, plunging the entire city into an irreversible local depression. The air was thick with desperation, though none of these proud men would ever admit it publicly. Anna didn't know any of this when one particularly chaotic Tuesday morning she accidentally spilled a scalding latte all over Luca Voss's impeccably tailored suit. He was just another grim-faced customer, albeit one who exuded an aura of profound weariness. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, looked like they hadn't closed in weeks, haunted by shadows that had nothing to do with the early hour. Instead of launching into a frantic apology, a common reflex for any waitress in her position, Anna did something entirely unexpected. She slid into the booth opposite him, her voice a low, steady murmur. "Your balance sheet's leaking worse than this latte, Mr. Voss," she said, her gaze unwavering. "Want a refill? Or are we talking about a rescue mission?" Luca blinked, stunned into silence. He'd spent years cultivating an impenetrable facade, yet this young woman, a waitress he'd never seen before, was reading last night's catastrophic stock drop in his exhausted eyes. It was unnerving, yet strangely disarming. He managed a curt nod, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his gaze. He left her a crisp $100 tip and a business card, a silent acknowledgement of her audacious insight. 1 week later, the other 4 CEOs, by some bizarre coincidence, started showing up at the Harbor View Cafe. Separately, of course. Each ordered the same unremarkable cheap house blend, nursing it for hours, their eyes scanning the room, perhaps for each other, perhaps for something else entirely. And each, without fail, left a $1,000 tip. Anna wasn't flattered by their extravagant gestures. She was furious. She knew this wasn't about the coffee. They were circling like sharks, but for what? One afternoon, she cornered Ray Keller, the tech guru, whose usual energetic buzz was replaced by a tense stillness. "Your rivalry is tanking pensions." "Ray," she snapped, not bothering with pleasantries. "Flirt. After you fix your cash flow. Okay, people's lives are at stake." Ray, usually quick with a witty retort, simply stared, mouth agape. Word spread through the city's elite faster than a viral tweet. The Harbor View girl, Anna Galliano, had the nerve to lecture titans. She was brazen, she was rude, she was captivating. But the titans, despite their injured pride, were desperate. Their backs were against the wall, and Anna, with her uncanny ability to see past their corporate armor, represented an unknown variable, a wild card. So they kept coming back, drawn by a strange, almost magnetic force. Each man, in the lonely confines of his penthouse or private jet, privately concluded the same ridiculous, unthinkable thought. If I could just convince her to marry me, maybe she'd steady me while I steady the company. It was an insane idea born of desperation and a primal, unspoken need for an anchor. None of them in their wildest dreams knew the others were harboring the exact same outlandish notion. Not until the night of the charity gala, when their separate orbits finally collided. The city's annual Founders Gala was usually a glittering affair, a showcase of wealth and influence. This year, however, it felt more like a wake in disguise. The city's elite, dressed in their finest, paid $5,000 a plate to pretend they weren't teetering on the edge of financial ruin. The champagne flowed, but the conversation was strained, punctuated by nervous glances at stock tickers on hidden phones. There was a palpable tension in the opulent ballroom, a thin veneer of civility stretched taut over a chasm of fear. Anna, in her crisp uniform, moved through the throng of anxious millionaires and nervous socialites, serving delicate hors d'oeuvres. Her eyes, however, weren't on the canapes. They were on the 5 men who had, in their own ways, become a strange, unwelcome fixture in her life. Luca, Matteo, Ray. Adrian and Dmitri stood in various clusters, their tailored tuxes doing little to hide the strain etched on their faces. Each of them flinched almost imperceptibly when the smarmy representative from the predatory lending firm took the stage, his voice oozing false concern as he began to praise cost-cutting synergies. Everyone in the room knew exactly what that corporate jargon meant. Mass layoffs, thousands of jobs. The final nail in the city's coffin. That was it. Anna snapped. The polite smiles, the forced laughter, the callous disregard for human lives, hidden behind financial euphemisms, it was all too much. Without a second thought, she moved with determined strides, bypassing security, and commandeered the mic from the bewildered lender's rep. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a jackhammer, a frantic rhythm against the sudden, stunned silence of the ballroom. "Gentlemen, ladies," her voice, though trembling slightly at first, quickly gained strength, echoing through the cavernous space. These 5 men, flawed as they may be, built our skyline. They employed our neighbors. Their companies are the backbone of this city. Fire them, dismantle their businesses, and you don't just erase balance sheets. You erase us. You erase lives, families, futures. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Then she delivered the bombshell. So here's a merger you didn't see coming. A solution that's unconventional, to say the least, me and all of them. Gasps ricocheted through the ballroom, a collective intake of breath that sounded like a sudden gust of wind. Whispers erupted, then shouts. Security guards, finally shaking off their stupor, began to move towards her, intent on dragging this audacious waitress off the stage. But then something extraordinary happened. Luca Voss, the man of steel, took a single decisive step forward. His voice, calm but firm, cut through the rising clamor. Let her speak. Mateo Cho, the shipping magnate, followed suit, his usually reserved demeanor replaced by a look of fierce protectiveness. Then Ray Keller, Adrian Shah, and Dmitry Volkov. One by one, the 5 rivals who just moments ago were glaring at each other across the room now stood shoulder to shoulder, a reluctant yet undeniable alliance forming before everyone's eyes. Their rivalry, born of competition and ego, was morphing into something entirely new, forged in shared desperation and a growing unspoken trust in this improbable woman. Anna, emboldened by their silent support, spelled out her audacious plan, her voice ringing with newfound authority. 1 marriage contract. Combined collateral. A prenup that includes a non-negotiable 2-year no-layoff clause for all employees across all 5 companies. We saved the companies, we saved the jobs. And yes, I'll sign on the dotted line. For all of them. The press, ever present at such high-profile events, went into a frenzy. Within hours, they dubbed it the 5-groom gambit. Stock futures, already volatile, wobbled violently. Then, surprisingly, began to stabilize as the sheer audacity of the plan sent shockwaves through the market. Twitter exploded a torrent of disbelief, outrage, and surprisingly, a wave of hopeful speculation. Anna fully expected to be mocked into obscurity, a punchline in a city desperate for any distraction. Instead, her phone rang. It was the governor, Miss Galliano. His voice was a mixture of bewilderment and desperate optimism. Your stunt seems to have frozen our market slide. The public is captivated. Can you actually pull this off? She answered, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Only if they say yes. All 5 within a dizzying 24 hours did. Each man, after a night of agonizing internal debate, after weighing their pride against the imminent collapse of their empires and the livelihoods of thousands, made the call. They said yes. But they had one condition, a test, if you will. She had to live with each man for a full week before the ceremony to assess operations, to truly understand the intricacies of their businesses, and perhaps most importantly, to decide if she could truly stomach the unprecedented merger. Anna, never one to back down from a challenge, agreed without hesitation. The countdown began. 35 days to save an economy, to prove that love could indeed be a strategic asset, and maybe, just maybe, to discover if love in its most unconventional form could truly scale. Luca Voss's penthouse wasn't just a living space. It was a monument. It felt like a museum of minimalist design and priceless untouched artifacts, cold, echoing, utterly devoid of warmth. Every surface gleamed, every piece of art perfectly positioned. But there was no sense of life, no hint of a home. It was a space designed for observation, not habitation. Anna, however, wasn't easily intimidated by polished chrome and austere aesthetics. On her first morning, she observed the night shift cooks in Luca's expansive, state-of-the-art kitchen. They moved with quiet efficiency, but there was a subtle hesitation, a slight fumbling for tools. She watched, listened, then, without a word, began to rearrange. Pans were moved to more intuitive locations, frequently used spices, brought within easy-reach prep stations optimized for flow. It was a small change, almost imperceptible to an outsider, but within 3 days, productivity in the kitchen jumped an astounding 8%. The cooks, initially wary of the new presence, now greeted her with quiet gratitude. Luca watched her, a flicker of something akin to amusement mixed with profound curiosity in his usually guarded eyes. "You optimize like a consultant, Miss Galliano," he remarked one evening, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. She met his gaze unflinching. "I optimize like someone who needs every minute, every ounce of efficiency just to pay rent, Mr. Voss." She corrected her voice, soft but firm. "There's a difference between optimizing for profit and optimizing for survival." His amusement faded, replaced by a thoughtful silence. He understood survival. On night 4, Anna found him in a hidden, grimy workshop tucked away behind a pristine home gym. He was hunched over a workbench, meticulously welding a miniature bridge model Sparks, flying in the dim light. It was a stark contrast to his public persona, a raw, almost childlike vulnerability. He confessed a rare admission that it was his private form of stress relief, a way to channel the immense pressure he carried. Anna, instead of judging, simply reached for a pair of goggles. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, a small smile playing on her lips. For the next hour, they worked in comfortable silence, the rhythmic hiss of the welder filling the space. Sparks flew literally as molten metal joined steel, and figuratively as something shifted between them. The sterile atmosphere of the penthouse seemed to recede, replaced by the warm glow of creation and shared purpose. Later that night, as they cleaned up, Luca's voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "I don't know how to let anyone past the lobby of my life, Anna," he admitted. His eyes fixed on the miniature bridge. It was a confession of profound loneliness from a man who commanded legions. She replied, her hand gently touching his arm. "Start by leaving the lobby yourself, Luca. Show them the workshop." In that moment, a barrier shattered. They shared a kiss, soft, startled tasting of metal and unspoken longing. It was a kiss that felt like steel, melting a quiet revolution in a life built on impenetrable walls. By the end of the week, Luca didn't just sign her core prenup. He signed her prenup addendum, a clause guaranteeing comprehensive health care for all steelworkers regardless of market fluctuations. It was a commitment that went far beyond profit margins, a testament to the fact that Anna had indeed helped him leave the lobby. Score 1. The Port Mateo Cho's domain was a symphony of industrious chaos. The air hummed with the roar of engines, the clang of shifting containers, and the surprisingly melodic, mournful cries of container ships sounding like whale songs at dawn, a constant reminder of the vast, interconnected world they served. But beneath the surface, Mateo's vast operation was hemorrhaging demurrage fees, crippling late charges incurred because outdated software was mistiming crane schedules, creating bottlenecks that cost millions. It was a digital Achilles' heel in a physical empire. Anna, ever practical, didn't just observe, she immersed herself. She rode shotgun in Mateo's massive port truck, the scent of diesel and sea salt filling the cab, her laptop open on her knees. Between sips of strong coffee, she dove deep into the labyrinthine lines of code, rebuilding the flawed algorithms, streamlining the complex logistics of a global shipping hub. She asked endless questions, not just of Mateo, but of the crane operators, the dock workers, the logistics managers, understanding their real-world challenges. She saw the problem from every angle, from the global supply chain down to the individual operator struggling with clunky interfaces. Her presence, initially met with skepticism, quickly earned her respect. The dock workers, a tough, no-nonsense crew, began to call her Captain A. Her ability to grasp complex problems and offer practical solutions, all while maintaining a calm, approachable demeanor, was unprecedented. Mateo, watching her command the respect of his grizzled crew, teased her one evening, a rare smile gracing his lips. "You're stealing their hearts, Anna," she shot back, a playful glint in her eye. "Better than you stealing their overtime, Mateo." He winced, a flicker of genuine regret crossing his face. The truth of her words, though delivered lightly, stung. He knew his previous focus on pure profit had sometimes come at the expense of his workforce's well-being. On night 5, a sudden ferocious storm swept in, knocking several crucial cranes offline. Chaos threatened to engulf the port. But Anna, instead of panicking, sprang into action. She coordinated with union representatives in real time, her voice a steady presence over crackling radios, rerouting cargo, prioritizing essential shipments, and mitigating damage. Her quick thinking and decisive action cut the potential losses by an incredible 30%. As the storm finally abated, leaving behind a salty, humid calm, Mateo found her on the rain-slicked dock, her face smudged with grease exhaustion etched around her eyes. He tasted sea salt on her cheek, and in a gesture of profound admiration and affection, gently kissed it away. Before the week was out, Mateo, whose pragmatic mind initially recoiled at anything that wasn't pure business, signed her addendum. It wasn't just about efficiency anymore. It was about equity. The clause promised profit sharing with the port crew, a direct incentive for their hard work, and a recognition of their vital role. 2 down. Anna was not just fixing balance sheets. She was mending the very fabric of the company's one human connection at a time. Ray Keller's open-plan tech campus pulsed with a restless energy, a vibrant hum of neon lights and unbridled ambition. It was a playground of innovation filled with brilliant minds, but it was also a pressure cooker. Burnout was rampant, quietly murdering coder retention, leading to a constant, costly churn of talent. The mantra was, work hard, play hard, but the play often involved more work in disguise, and the hard was pushing people past their limits. Anna, observing the pale faces, the endless energy drinks, and the sleeping bags under desks, understood immediately. This wasn't sustainable. She wasn't a coder, but she knew human beings. She instituted what many initially scoffed at as soft policies, radical in the cutthroat tech world. Mandatory 6 p.m. lights out, no exceptions. Family dinner stipends, encouraging employees to go home and connect with their loved ones. And perhaps most controversially, no email Fridays, a sacred day for focused work without the constant digital interruptions. Initially, there was resistance. Productivity blogs, ever hungry for clickbait, mocked her soft approach, predicting a catastrophic drop in output. But Anna held firm, explaining her philosophy. A well-rested mind is a creative mind. A connected employee is a loyal employee. She met skepticism with data intuition, with empathy, and slowly, miraculously, her policies began to work. Git commits, the measure of code contributions, surged. Bugs plummeted, employee satisfaction soared, and the once revolving door of talent began to slow. Ray, initially dubious, watched in stunned admiration. One evening, as Anna plated tacos for an impromptu hackathon dinner she'd organized, he approached her, a look of genuine bewilderment on his face. "How did you know Anna?" he asked, his voice laced with a newfound respect. "How did you know engineers of all people crave boundaries?" She smiled, a knowing, empathetic curve of her lips. Because waitresses do, Ray. Everyone does. We all need a clear line between work and life, a space to simply be human. It was a revelation. Ray, who had always believed that passion alone fueled innovation, realized that structure and care were just as crucial. He saw in Anna not just a fixer, but a visionary who understood the human element of technology. He kissed her then, right beside a humming 3D printer that was prototyping their future, a future where tech and humanity weren't at odds. His signature on her prenup addendum wasn't just a legal formality, it was a philosophical shift. The clause protected contract workers from predatory non-compete agreements, a common practice in the tech world that stifled innovation and trapped talent. It was Anna's way of ensuring that the human capital, the brilliant minds that made Ray's company thrive, were treated with dignity and fairness. Halfway home, 3 down, 2 to go. Adrian Shaw's pharma lab was a pristine, almost sterile environment filled with the hushed whispers of brilliant researchers. But beneath the gleaming surfaces and advanced equipment lay a profound ethical dilemma. For months, whispers had circulated about a groundbreaking, potentially life-saving antidote, a true medical marvel shelved indefinitely for lack of crucial Phase 3 funding. The corporate behemoth that was Adrian's company, bound by risk-averse investors and a stifling bureaucracy, had deemed it too costly, too uncertain to pursue. It was a tragic irony, a cure locked away while people suffered. Anna, upon learning of the antidote, didn't see a financial risk. She saw a moral imperative. She immediately proposed a radical, almost unheard-of solution: a crowdsourced trial. Her vision was simple yet revolutionary: transparency. First, patents second. She argued that by openly sharing early research and involving the public, they could generate both funding and goodwill, bypassing the traditional slow-moving investment channels. The reaction from investors was immediate and furious. Threats to pull out of other projects, accusations of recklessness, fears of setting a dangerous precedent. The boardroom erupted in a cacophony of outrage. "Are you mad?" one screamed. "You'll tank the stock." But Anna stood firm, her voice unwavering amidst the storm. "People, first, patents later," she declared, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces. "What good is a patent if the people it's meant to save are already gone?" Her conviction was infectious. Adrian, initially hesitant, found himself swayed by her unwavering moral compass. Anna didn't just talk, she acted. She orchestrated a live stream of patient recovery data from early, small-scale, compassionate use cases. The raw, unfiltered stories of lives being saved, broadcast directly to the world, bypassed corporate gatekeepers and PR spin. Donations poured in from individuals, from small foundations, from communities desperate for hope. The narrative shifted from financial risk to human impact, from corporate greed to collective good. Adrian, a man used to the cold logic of science and the calculated risks of business, watched Anna transform a boardroom full of skeptics into reluctant, then enthusiastic believers. He saw her not just as a strategist, but as an alchemist, turning fear into hope and cynicism into compassion. He kissed her. Under the fume hood, the sterile air of the lab momentarily forgotten as their goggles fogged with shared breath and emotion. It was a kiss that tasted of purpose, of a shared mission to heal. His signing of her prenup addendum was perhaps the most personal and profound act of his life. It was a pledge to cap insulin prices at cost for low-income patients, a direct affront to the pharmaceutical industry's profit-driven model. It was Adrian's commitment, inspired by Anna, to prioritize human well-being over corporate profits, to ensure that life-saving medicine was accessible to all, not just those who could afford it. Fourth anchor secured. Fashion Week loomed like a glittering, demanding storm cloud over Dmitry Volkov's empire. His label, once the darling of the runways, was now bleeding money not just from dwindling sales, but from its reliance on unsustainable, environmentally damaging fabrics and production methods. The industry was shifting, demanding ethical practices and eco-consciousness, and Dmitry, for all his artistic vision, was stuck in the past, watching his profits unravel like a cheap seam. His creativity, once boundless, felt stifled by the weight of tradition and the fear of change. Anna, stepping into the whirlwind of Dmitry's studio, didn't just see a fashion house. She saw a canvas for transformation. She didn't know haute couture, but she understood resourcefulness and impact. Her solution was audacious, yet brilliantly simple: source recycled ocean plastic, transform it, and design an entire trash-to-couture line overnight. It was a bold statement, a direct challenge to the industry's wasteful practices. She worked tirelessly with Dmitry's artisans, translating her vision into tangible designs, collaborating on everything from fabric textures to garment silhouettes. The Fashion Week show, usually a tense, exclusive affair, became a global event. Models strutted down the runway in garments that were not only stunningly innovative, but also told a powerful story of regeneration. Buyers, initially skeptical, applauded wildly. Eco-activists, usually critical of the fashion industry, cheered from the sidelines, their protests momentarily forgotten in the face of such a compelling display of ethical design. The media was captivated. Sales tripled pre-orders, proving that purpose and profit could indeed coexist. Dmitry, a man accustomed to being the center of attention, found himself genuinely humbled. He watched Anna, radiant in the glow of their shared success, and realized something profound. "I dress the world, Anna," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But you dressed my purpose. You showed me how to weave meaning into every thread." He kissed her, then, amidst the whirring of sewing machines, the air thick with the scent of new fabric and shared triumph. It was a kiss that felt like creative liberation, a fusion of art and ethics. His signature on her prenup clause wasn't just about economics. It was about dignity. It guaranteed living wages for all garment workers, from the pattern makers in his studio to the seamstresses in his global factories. It was Dmitry's commitment to ensuring that the hands that brought his designs to life were treated with the respect and fairness they deserved. 5 contracts sealed. 5 contracts. Anna now had a week left to plan a 5-groom wedding, a logistical nightmare, and perhaps even more daunting, convince a skeptical judge that polyamorous unions weren't just a publicity stunt, but a legitimate, loving, and legally viable solution to a city's crisis. The world watched breathless. Just when it seemed like the impossible was becoming reality, the city's fragile hope was shattered by a tidal wave of backlash. The old guard, those who benefited from the status quo and feared Anna's radical approach, fought back with venom. Investors, furious at the disruption and the audacious prenup clauses, sued, claiming the marriage scheme artificially inflated valuations and was nothing more than a speculative gamble. They saw only numbers, not the thousands of lives Anna was trying to save. The predatory lender, reeling from the public spotlight and the threat to their iron grip, retaliated with a brutal smear campaign. They leaked doctored footage of Anna, carefully edited and taken out of context, showing her yelling at workers, clips designed to paint her as a tyrannical, opportunistic gold digger. The truth that she was defending those same workers was buried under a mountain of fabricated outrage. Protesters, fueled by misinformation and resentment, camped outside the Harborview Cafe, their signs screaming "gold digger" and "con artist." The very people she was fighting for, manipulated by the media, were now turning against her. Her best friend Mia found Anna weeping quietly in the back office of the cafe, the hateful chants echoing through the glass. You're saving their hides. Anna. Mia hissed, tears of frustration in her own eyes. You're doing something incredible, and they brand you a con. It's not fair. The emotional toll was immense. Then came the final brutal blow. Her landlord, pressured by anonymous threats and public sentiment, served her an eviction notice. The cafe, her sanctuary, her starting point, was being taken from her. The billionaires, scattered by the sudden ferocious scandal, retreated to their separate corners. They were men used to controlling narratives, to fighting battles on their own terms. This public personal attack, so visceral and ugly, caught them off guard. They became isolated, each grappling with the fallout in his own way, their nascent alliance fracturing under the strain. For the first time, Anna cried. Not a few tears, but a wrenching, gut-deep sob that shook her to her core. Alone in a cheap motel room, the fluorescent light flickering like her dwindling hope, she felt the crushing weight of the world on her shoulders. She almost walked away. The thought was a siren song promising escape from the relentless scrutiny and the thankless fight. But then the layoffs started. Quietly at first, then a trickle, then a steady stream. Luca's night shift deemed non-essential by terrified middle management. Ray's contract coders cut loose to save face. Matteo's part-timers deemed expendable. The very people she had vowed to protect, the reason she had embarked on this insane journey, were now suffering. Anna realized with a sickening lurch in her stomach that walking wasn't an option. Perfection was a luxury she couldn't afford. People needed paychecks, not a... The crisis deepened, spiraling into a maelstrom of bad press and economic uncertainty. The layoffs continued, a grim tally that haunted Anna's every waking moment. But instead of succumbing to despair, a fierce resolve ignited within her. She was battered, bruised, but not broken. There was only one way forward, and it involved confronting the very men who had, however unintentionally, abandoned her in her darkest hour. She sent a single terse text message to all 5 men, conference room, Harbor View, 6 a.m. Bring your issues, leave your egos. It wasn't a request, it was a command delivered with the quiet authority born of absolute conviction. They showed. Bleary-eyed, bruised by the public condemnation and visibly uncomfortable, but they showed. Luca's jaw was tight. Matteo's gaze distant. Ray fidgeted nervously. Adrian looked drawn, and Dimitri's usual flamboyance was muted. The room, usually filled with the comforting aroma of coffee, was thick with unspoken tension and lingering resentment. Anna didn't mince words. She laid out her new non-negotiable terms, her voice calm but unwavering, cutting through the heavy silence. We face the media together or we sink separately. Your choice. There is no middle ground, no individual retreat. This isn't just about our companies anymore. It's about the city, and it's about proving that integrity still matters. She looked each man directly in the eye, challenging them to find the courage she knew was buried beneath their pride and fear. The silence that followed was deafening, stretching taut as a bowstring. Each man grappled with his own internal demons, his own fears of further public humiliation. Then, Luca Voss, the man who had always prided himself on his stoicism, spoke first. His voice was low, gravelly, but firm. I choose together. It was a simple statement, yet it carried the weight of a monumental decision, a breaking of the personal isolation that had almost doomed them. One by one, the others followed. Matteo, his gaze now steady, nodded. Ray, pushing aside his anxiety, gave a determined sigh. Adrian, his quiet strength emerging, squared his shoulders. Dimitri, ever the showman, managed a small, defiant smile. The reluctant alliance was reforged, stronger this time, tempered by the fire of adversity. They pooled their resources, their collective intelligence and their shattered reputations. Their first act, a joint public apology, not for the marriage itself, but for the perception of it, for allowing the narrative to be twisted. Then they released the unedited security footage, the full, unvarnished truth of Anna defending workers, exposing the predatory lender's malicious editing. It was a masterclass in transparency, a powerful counter-narrative. They launched a joint PR campaign, a massive undertaking they dubbed Empire of Hearts, 5 Sectors, 1 Future. It was a bold declaration transforming the scandal into a story of unity, resilience, and a shared vision for a better future. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Stock prices, which had plummeted, stabilized, then began a slow, steady climb. The lender, exposed and humiliated, blinked first. Their attempts to further sabotage the alliance were met with public outcry and legal challenges that now had the backing of 5 powerful corporations. They retreated, their power diminished. But one hurdle remained. The judge, still hesitant, still grappling with the unprecedented nature of a 5-way civil union, had yet to give his final approval. The entire city held its breath, waiting for the final. City Hall steps overflowed. It wasn't just a crowd. It was a sea of humanity, a vibrant tapestry of the very people Anna and the billionaires had fought to save. Workers from every sector, steelworkers, dock workers, coders, lab technicians, garment artisans, wore custom-made T-shirts. Each shirt bore a unique design, their company logo intricately interlocked with the logos of the other 4 firms, like Olympic rings, a powerful symbol of their newfound unity and shared destiny. The atmosphere was electric, a mixture of joyous anticipation, defiant hope, and palpable relief. Anna emerged a vision of understated elegance. She wore a simple yet breathtaking ivory dress meticulously embroidered by Dimitri's master artisans. Every fiber of the gown told a story, threads of lustrous steel thread, delicate pharma silk, woven with innovative polymers, and subtle tech-led trim that shimmered with micro-LEDs. It was a garment that perfectly encapsulated the merger, a testament to the beauty born from collaboration. The 5 billionaires stood waiting, a striking tableau against the backdrop of the historic building. They were arranged in ascending height, a subtle visual detail that spoke volumes about their individual personalities and their collective presence. Each man held a prenup, rolled tightly like a diploma, a symbol of their commitment, not just to Anna, but to the radical future they were stepping into. The officiant, a wise, compassionate labor union chaplain, had been chosen specifically for his deep understanding of community and human connection. His voice, strong and clear, resonated through the crowd. "Do you, Anna Galliano?" he began, his gaze warm and direct. "Take these men, Luca Voss, Matteo, Cho Ray, Keller, Adrian Shah, and Dmitry Volkov, to honor, to share, to challenge, and to uplift in this extraordinary union." Anna's smile was radiant, her eyes shining with both love and a fierce determination. "I do," multiplied, she answered, her voice ringing with conviction, a collective yes that echoed the magnitude of her commitment. To each man, the chaplain posed the same question, tailored to their individual vows. And in unison, their voices strong and unwavering, they replied, "We do, united!" The city held its breath, a collective gasp of emotion and wonder. Then a ripple ran through the crowd. Phones buzzed, screens lit up. The live stream broadcast globally was showing a split screen. On one side, the ceremony unfolding on the steps. On the other, a close-up of a judge, his face etched with concentration, signing a document. Mid-ceremony, in an unprecedented move, the judge had signed the paperwork legalizing the 5-way civil union. The news spread like wildfire. The crowd erupted. A joyous roar swept through the plaza, a cacophony of cheers, applause, and spontaneous tears. Sirens, usually a sound of alarm, harmonized with the triumphant peal of church bells, creating a unique symphony of celebration. Strangers embraced their faces, streaked with tears of relief and hope. For once, the headlines weren't about collapse, fear, or division. They were about collaboration, innovation, and the boundless potential of human connection. It was a wedding that saved a city, a testament to the idea that sometimes the most outrageous solutions are the ones that work. The first year of the merged enterprise, boldly named the Galliano Group, was nothing short of revolutionary. Anna, true to her nature, didn't just sit on the board. She served as its founding CEO, a role she approached with the same blend of empathy and strategic acumen she brought to her cafe. To ensure true collaboration and prevent any single ego from dominating, she instituted a rotating board presidency every quarter, a system designed to foster shared leadership and mutual respect among the five titans, now her partners and husbands. Their first act as a united front was a decisive break from the past, refinancing their colossal debt. Instead of succumbing to the predatory lender who had almost destroyed them, they pioneered an innovative approach, issuing community bonds. This allowed citizens to directly invest in the revitalized local economy, fostering a sense of ownership and collective prosperity. The move not only cut ties with their former oppressor, but also injected a new kind of capital into their businesses, one built on trust and shared destiny. Their second act was born directly from the heart of their unconventional union, the opening of Heartware. This groundbreaking marriage counseling startup, housed within Ray's sleek tech campus, offered free therapy and relationship guidance not just to their employees, but to all couples in the community. Funded by a percentage of Galliano Group profits, Heartware became a living testament to their belief that strong relationships, both personal and professional, were the bedrock of any thriving society. It was a radical idea, blending business acumen with profound social impact. Their third act solidified their commitment to their workforce. By Christmas, profit-sharing dividends, a direct result of their combined efficiency and newfound ethical practices, hit every employee's account. For many, it was the first time they'd ever felt truly valued by their employers, a tangible reward for their loyalty and hard work. The results were undeniable. The local economy, once on the brink of collapse, grew a robust 4% in the very next quarter. National media, initially skeptical, now hailed it as the Cinderella IPO, a fairy tale of corporate redemption and social responsibility. Anna, ever grounded, simply called it math plus empathy. It wasn't magic. It was a deliberate, compassionate strategy that proved that focusing on people could lead to unprecedented prosperity. The Galliano Group wasn't just a business. It was a movement, a blueprint for a new kind of capitalism. But even a fairy tale born of math and empathy wasn't immune to the messy realities of human emotion. Polyamory, for all its potential for boundless love and shared purpose, wasn't fairy tale simple. The initial euphoria of saving the city and building an empire eventually gave way to the subtle, insidious creep of jealousy, a quiet tremor beneath the surface of their extraordinary union. Luca, the stoic man of steel, found himself growing quiet, withdrawing into his thoughts whenever Anna spent extra evenings strategizing fashion lines with Dmitri. He was used to being the unwavering anchor, the primary focus, and seeing Anna's passionate energy directed elsewhere, even for business, sparked an unfamiliar pang of insecurity. His traditional upbringing whispered doubts in his ear. Is this enough for her? Am I enough? Ray's coder friends, with their typical bluntness, joked that he'd won the shortest straw because Anna seemed to love coding culture and innovation the most. Ray, despite knowing it was playful banter, felt a prickle of competitive envy. He prided himself on his intellectual connection with Anna, and the idea that another might share a deeper, more frequent spark of that intellectual intimacy was a bitter pill. He wanted to be her primary sounding board, her intellectual confidant, and the reality of sharing that role was a constant low-level hum of unease. Mateo's dock workers, never ones to miss an opportunity for a good-natured jab, teased him about sharing cargo space. Mateo, usually unshakable, found their jokes landing a little too close to the bone. He was a man of direct action, of clear lines, and the emotional complexities of a multi-partner relationship, especially when it came to intimacy and time, were a constant challenge to his straightforward nature. He craved simplicity, and this was anything but. Adrian, with his quieter, more introspective nature, harbored a deep-seated fear that his less boisterous personality made him the least loved. He worried he wasn't as exciting as Ray, as commanding as Luca, as passionate as Dmitri, or as grounded as Mateo. He constantly sought reassurance, often retreating into himself when he felt overlooked, a silent plea for affirmation that often went unnoticed amidst the larger, more vibrant personalities of his partners. Dmitri, accustomed to the spotlight and the adulation of the fashion world, bristled with barely concealed irritation when paparazzi, still obsessed with their story, cropped him out of photos to feature Ray and Anna or Luca and Anna. He craved external validation, and feeling diminished even in a photo stoked his insecurities. He struggled with the idea of sharing the stage, of not being the sole focus of Anna's artistic and personal attention. Anna felt the tension like a stretched rope, a delicate wire threatening to snap. She saw the subtle shifts in their body language, heard the unspoken words in their silences, and recognized the familiar patterns of human insecurity magnified by the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. She knew this wasn't sustainable. One night, after a particularly strained board meeting, she gathered them in the cafe. After hours, the familiar scent of coffee grounding her. Her voice was firm, yet laced with a deep concern. "I didn't marry 5 marketing brands," she began, looking each man in the eye. "I married 5 hearts, and right now, those hearts are beating out of sync. We need to talk, or we implode personally and professionally." And they talked. They argued, voices raised and raw emotions laid bare. They confessed their fears, their insecurities, their unspoken resentments, and yes, they cried, even steel-willed Luca, whose tears were a revelation, a testament to the depth of his vulnerability. By sunrise, exhausted but lighter, they reached a new understanding. They agreed to weekly share circles with a professional mediator, a dedicated space for open communication, for airing grievances, for nurturing their unique bond. No press allowed, no corporate agendas, just 6 people committed to making their extraordinary relationship work. It became their anchor, a vital lifeline in the stormy seas of their unconventional love. The share circles helped, providing a much-needed emotional pressure release valve. But even the strongest anchors can be tested by unforeseen currents. One day, a rival conglomerate, a ruthless global tech giant known as Omnicorp, made an offer to Ray Keller that threatened to shatter the fragile peace of the Galliano Group. It was a staggering billion-dollar offer to license a patent that would directly undercut Adrian's life-saving antidote, effectively cornering the market and rendering Adrian's ethical pricing model obsolete. The temptation was immense. Ray, for all his commitment to the group, was still a tech prodigy at heart, accustomed to the thrill of individual triumph and the validation of groundbreaking innovation. Omnicorp's offer was a powerful lure, a direct appeal to his ego, a chance to prove his individual worth outside the collective. He hesitated, not for long, but long enough. He didn't sign, but he kept the unsigned contract tucked away in his desk drawer, a secret indulgence, a forbidden fantasy of solo glory. Adrian, ever meticulous, stumbled upon the contract during a late-night search for a shared research document. The sight of Omnicorp's letterhead, the astronomical figures, the implications for his antidote, and the patients it served, hurt, exploded through him, sharp and visceral. He felt a profound sense of betrayal, a crack in the foundation of trust they had so carefully built. This wasn't just a business deal, it was a personal affront, a violation of their shared values. He confronted Ray, the raw emotion of betrayal overriding his usual quiet diplomacy, in front of the others. The ensuing yelling match was explosive, a torrent of accusations and desperate defenses. Luca Matteo and Dimitri watched, stunned, as the two men tore at each other, their voices echoing through the once peaceful conference room. It felt like the end. Anna walked in mid-yelling match, drawn by the furious shouts. For the first time, she didn't intervene. She could have easily, with a calming word or a strategic question. But she sensed this wasn't a moment for her to fix. It was a moment for them to break through. She waited, her presence a silent, powerful anchor in the storm, allowing the raw emotions to run their course, trusting in the underlying bond, however strained it might be. Finally, Ray's voice broke, shaking with a mix of shame and exhaustion. "I didn't sign," he confessed, his gaze dropping to the floor. I just wanted to feel valued, to know that my ideas, my innovations could still command that kind of attention, that kind of power on my own. It was a raw, vulnerable admission, a glimpse into the deep-seated insecurities that even a billionaire tech mogul could harbor. Adrian exhaled, the tension draining from his body. The anger, though still present, was tempered by a sudden, profound understanding. He hadn't been betrayed by malice, but by a desperate need for individual recognition, a need they hadn't fully addressed within their collective. Luca, ever. The grounded elder stepped forward, his voice calm and resonant. "Value isn't a bidding war, Ray," he said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's a promise we made to each other and to the city we saved. Your value is in this." With a decisive gesture, he took the unsigned contract from Ray's desk. Together, the six of them, in a symbolic act of renewed commitment, shredded the offer, tearing the paper into countless pieces, letting the fragments flutter into a waste bin. The very next day, without any PR fanfare, without a single press release, they increased community access to Adrian's antidote by a remarkable 40%. It was a quiet, powerful act of integrity.
Cheers.
A tangible demonstration of their renewed trust and shared purpose. The trust, once shattered, was mended, and in its mending, it became stronger, more resilient, and more profound. They had faced betrayal and emerged not broken, but more deeply connected. One late night, after a particularly grueling week of board meetings, policy debates, and relationship counseling sessions, Anna found herself alone on the cafe rooftop. The city lights flickered below a vast, complex tapestry of possibility, each point of light, a life, a dream, a struggle. She sat on the cool asphalt, wrapped in a thin blanket, and finally allowed herself to ask the question she had unconsciously feared, the one that gnawed at the edges of her extraordinary life. Did I marry them for love or for the mission? It was a question that felt almost sacrilegious, yet it was vital, a yearning for clarity in a life lived so publicly, so unconventionally. Just as the thought settled, soft footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn around. She knew. All five of them, drawn by some invisible thread, had come to find her. They didn't speak, didn't demand an explanation. They simply brought comfort, each in his own unique, thoughtful way. Luca, always practical and grounded, carried a steaming mug of chamomile tea. His hands, usually calloused from steelwork, surprisingly gentle as he offered it to her. Matteo, ever observant, brought a hand-knitted dockworker beanie, knowing the rooftop could be chilly, a small, tangible piece of his world offered to hers. Ray, the tech wizard, had a tablet preloaded and silently streaming her favorite silent-era film, a whimsical escape from the weight of their empire. Adrian, the quiet healer, held a small vial of lavender oil, its soothing scent, a balm for stress, a silent acknowledgement of the burdens she carried. And Dmitri, the fashion mogul, draped his own luxurious warm jacket around her shoulders, a gesture of protection and care against the cool night breeze. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the men she had married by their unspoken understanding and their tangible acts of love, Anna realized something profound. Love hadn't shown up in grand declarations or dramatic gestures. It had shown up in details. In the warmth of the tea, the comfort of the beanie, the thoughtful escape of a film, the soothing scent of lavender, the protective embrace of a jacket. It was in the hundreds of small, everyday considerations, the ways they saw her, truly saw her beyond her role as CEO or savior. She didn't need to choose between mission and heart, between purpose and passion. They weren't separate entities vying for her attention. They had fused, inextricably linked in the tapestry of their shared lives. The mission was love expressed through action, through justice, through building a better world. And the love was her mission, the driving force behind every strategic decision, every empathetic choice. She whispered the words barely audible above the gentle hum of the city. Maybe love's limit is that it has none. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a profound, liberating truth. They wrapped her in a six-person hug, a circle of warmth and acceptance, the sprawling skyline, the very city they had saved, bearing silent witness to their unconventional, boundless love. 2 years later, the Galliano Group wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, posting record profits that defied every market expectation. But the bigger headline, the one that truly captured the world's imagination, wasn't about quarterly earnings. It was about the birth of little Fleet, the first child welcomed into the extraordinary six-parent household. The biological father, chosen via a friendly, utterly democratic coin flip, was beaming, but all six names, a testament to their unwavering commitment and unique family structure, proudly adorned the birth certificate. It was a new kind of family, a new kind of love, defying every societal norm and redefining what it meant to be a parent. Heartware Centers. Their pioneering marriage counseling initiative had expanded nationwide, a beacon of hope and guidance for countless couples struggling with the complexities of modern relationships. Their innovative approach, blending emotional intelligence with practical strategies, proved that the lessons learned in their own unconventional union could benefit everyone. Anna's original cafe, the Harbor View, had become something more than just a coffee shop. It was now a museum of collective grit, a living monument to the power of community and audacious vision. The tips, once barely enough to cover rent, now funded college scholarships for workers' kids across the entire Galliano Group, ensuring a brighter future for the next generation. The five men, now seasoned co-parents and even more formidable business partners, still argued, of course. Their most passionate and often hilarious debates revolved around who made the best Sunday pancakes, a cherished family tradition. Luca insisted on precision, Matteo on efficiency, Ray on innovative ingredients, Adrian on nutritional balance, and Dmitri naturally on presentation. And Anna, the woman who started it all, still rolled her eyes at their playful squabbles and kissed each of them good morning, a daily ritual of love and affirmation. Because sometimes she knew the most outrageous vow is the sanest solution. And sometimes a waitress doesn't need a glass slipper to find her prince or even 5 of them. She just needs 5 pens to sign a future. No one else dared to imagine a future built on courage, compassion, and the boundless, limitless power of love. If this story, this wild, incredible journey made you believe that love can scale taller than skyscrapers, that empathy can fuel an empire, then do us a huge favor. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and drop a comment below. We want to know, could you share your heart or even your business with more than one person? What are your thoughts on unconventional love and unconventional solutions? Let's talk about it in the comments. We love hearing from you. We started this adventure with a city on the brink of bankruptcy. 5 proud, fiercely competitive men facing ruin and one fearless waitress carrying a tray of coffee and a heart full of courage. We end with a landscape transformed. Thousands of jobs saved, critical medicines delivered, fashion runways lit with purpose, ships docked and unloaded with precision, and groundbreaking code shipped with integrity. And of course, a wedding photo that didn't just break the internet. It redefined what was possible for all the right reasons. Anna's audacious gamble, her blend of pragmatism and profound empathy, reminded us that when love teams up with strategy, when compassion guides commerce, miracles don't look like magic. They look like math. They look like deliberate, heartfelt choices that change lives. So next time life offers you a rigid either-or, a choice between two seemingly opposing paths, remember Anna's aisle. She walked it 5 times in one day, and in doing so she turned multiplication into unity, competition into collaboration, and fear into an empire of hearts. Thanks for watching, for joining us on this incredible journey. Stay kind, stay bold, and hey, if you want another wild ride, another story of unexpected genius and groundbreaking change, tap the recap on the poor girl turned secret tech genius linked right here. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep your heart open. It just might fit more than you ever thought possible.